What's up, everyone? It's Brandy Mack. Welcome back to Do What You Can Live With podcast. Happy to be back. It's been a while. I know that's always the excuse. Life has been a little crazy, but in a good way. I figured I'd start with kind of an update just as far as what's kind of been going on. My daughter is next month. She will have 2 years in recovery. How did that happen? Like, it still just doesn't even seem real. And it's just been such a whirlwind of an experience, but she genuinely is doing so good. My other daughter, who is a cosmetologist, she actually cut my daughter's hair she wanted like kind of, I guess it's kind of a long mullet cut. And Brooke's hair has grown out so much and it's naturally kind of almost curly and it looks really cool. And she loves it. That is, it's just been really cool to see her growth. And then last month, we celebrated my granddaughter's first birthday. Her nickname is Bread. So if you hear me say baby Bread, that's my granddaughter. And was just seeing her be a part of that and present and just sober and happy. I just don't take any of it for granted. It's just been so beautiful to watch. As far as me, working full time. Hopefully, the amount of days I work will go down. It'll still be full time, but I'm trying to work less days so I can focus more on my advocacy and just doing this, which I've really learned to love. But as far as that's going well. One of the things like I just got back from a small private event. It was Rise for Recovery Summit. And this was the third year that they've done it, Brayburn. And I was invited to that over the summer. And I was a little hesitant to go, but I went. And that's something I'll be kind of talking about in the podcast today. It ended up being an amazing experience. And if you're familiar with Kensington area, I had the opportunity to go down there. And we'll get more into all of that. But life, for the most part, is great. If anything, I feel like what I'm struggling with is I wish I had more time to dedicate to this work rather than the hospital work. But otherwise, I genuinely have no complaints. I have, as far as self-care, I would say I actually started painting some. I have never been artistic, but what I have done has turned out pretty cool. And it's been kind of like a nice release to get out of my head because my coping is also unhealthy. I may not use illicit substances, but I naturally am prone to be a workaholic, which is absolutely not healthy. So I'm learning to try to be present and still very much a work in progress. Something that I am wanting to start doing with this is I want to open it up for people to send emails in to tell a story, and I'll start reading them kind of at the beginning of when I do these episodes. My goal at this point is to really, because I've kind of had this writer's block of when it comes to creating content, and I refuse to fabricate drama. That is just nothing I do is for clicks and views. It is to educate, share, a story that I know touches so many lives and kind of where we are. And life is really good. And so I cannot complain about that, but it has really left me struggling with how to continue to help this community. And interviewing others who have been impacted by addiction is something that in the beginning, when I originally started this podcast, that is what I wanted to do. It was just too much at the time. My daughter, she was in active use, and due to being a workaholic, I was just taking on way too much. So that's gonna be the focus. It's going to be doing this podcast, opening it up for interviews, and giving people the opportunity to share their story because this isn't just our story. It impacts too many lives. And I just think stories are really important, and people who wanna share it, I wanna give them the opportunity to share it with others and kinda go from there. One of the biggest barriers I'm having with that, which I talked to my husband about, is that I lost my office when I got all my kids in the house. And a lot of times when scheduling podcast interviews, they're going to happen in the evening and it's always loud. And so that has actually really been the biggest barrier with recording. Nobody's here tonight. That's why it's quiet. You hear that? Me either. But, we have another shed. I've been telling him it's just not cheap. Everything's so fucking expensive, saying I really need a space. And because I really think something really cool could come out of this, but I can't have the chaos in the background while trying to interview. This ADHD brain isn't going to be able to handle it. But we will get there. We'll figure it out. I just may not be able to produce and push out content as much as the goal would be to do, just because of that and time constraints and scheduling. So more to come on that. This will be the last update, but January is the goal right now. Myself, Jennifer Sims, who is actually another mom I had met through social media, she is in recovery and she uses medicated assisted treatment, and her daughter is actually in active use. And so she really knows both sides. Her and she does a lot, knows so much about treatment and actually works like in that field. And so her and I are going to start doing free groups for, families. And so there will be more to come on that because I just know that there's more we can do and we want to provide a safe space, non-judgmental. I think it's going to be really cool. But anyways, what we're going to talk about is the Rise for Recovery event I just attended. Let's see, back in the summer, I was contacted about this summit. I was thinking it was going to be open to the public, and because I've really been trying to put myself out there and do more public speaking, keynote speaker type engagements and get out from behind the phone. And I've actually done several this year so far. And so when they approached me regarding attending the event and being on a panel regarding storytelling and social media, which I've done social media now, it's going on 6 years, and telling our story and advocating that way is coming in before a bunch of advocates from all over the country and sharing how you tell a story, how you get people to engage, and how impactful storytelling can be. And I was like, oh, okay. So it wasn't like really telling our story to this audience, but you have to obviously tell a piece of it. And I got to share some videos. Anytime due to past experiences and being kind of traumatized and from the last treatment stint my daughter was at, I'm very hesitant to collaborate with anyone. I'm very guarded. That was very painful for me, and it was painful for my daughter. And so there's been kind of a lot of fear going into that and even moving forward because I feel really untrusting. And it is something I'm working through because I normally always try to give people the benefit of the doubt and see the good in them. And it burned me really bad. And unfortunately, it it doesn't upset me as much that it burned me, but it hurt my daughter. And that's the piece that really bothers me the most. So that's why I never really collaborate with anyone. I decided I got to get out from behind the phone. I want to start speaking. Advocacy is so important to me, and I really want to help bring positive change to treatment, policies, and just continue to educate and be part of the solution, not the problem. And I've struggled with trying to figure out how to go about doing that. But I feel like the past few days really kind of opened my eyes and allowed me to really start to think about, and I think it gave me hope, honestly. As nervous as I was able to engage with these people I've never met before and have genuine fun and passionate conversations about all different areas of addiction and learn. I love learning. And so that was just kind of like a really cool piece for me. Okay, so this event was held in the Philadelphia area, and I flew up there and I was fucking nervous about that. I'm not a big fan of flying. I need to be flying the plane because that's how much of a control freak I am. But I've flown quite a bit in my adult life. So I am more comfortable, but doesn't mean I like it. And then add the government shutdown into the mix. And I'm like, oh, great. Let's fly with less like controllers that are helping this. And then what? That UPS, I think it was UPS plane crashed the day before I was going to fly out. So that made me feel a lot better. So I was already nervous about that. I flew up. Luckily, it was a direct flight and the flight was fine. Flew into some colder weather. And as soon as I got to the hotel, a group of people were waiting. Our rooms weren't ready. And immediately I was comfortable. I literally like walked up and this small group of guys who were going to be there, they introduced themselves and they're like, "Okay, let's go get lunch." And I was like, "Okay." And so I just went. And so the panel that I was going to be speaking with was two other people, Natalie King, who actually it's very interesting. Coincidental, I'm guessing, but it's just kind of crazy. Natalie, she is in recovery. Her story is pretty amazing. I'll have to interview her because I could have her come and I can interview her in person. So that would be really cool because interestingly enough, Natalie and I have been friends on social media for several years now, and she lives in the same county as I do. It's kind of crazy. What's even crazier about it is this wasn't coordinated, being invited to this small event. When I saw it was Natalie, I knew exactly who she was. And I was like, wow, how crazy is that? Both of us are from this county. So it was really cool because I knew who she was, but we had never met in person. And then the other person I had never heard of, I'm like, who the hell is this guy? Was this guy named Dave. I guess he has some small itty bitty podcast called the Dopey Podcast. I had never heard of it. And I'm serious. And normally I like to go and look up the people that I will be working with, right? And things were kind of crazy for a bit when I self-published my book and I was doing a lot of podcast interviews and working and so it was just kind of chaotic. Dave and I had followed each other on Instagram. And so I knew he had this podcast and I saw some of his clips and I laughed, but I hadn't really looked into him at all. So I didn't know a lot about his show. And so he was actually in that group of guys. And so we had done like one Zoom call together to prepare our slides and everything and discuss what we were going to do. And he was just wonderful. I felt comfortable immediately when I met him. And Britt was also in that group, and I never knew who Britt was, but he lives in the area. He actively does outreach in the Kensington area in Philly, and he has the Philly Unknown Project that he's over. And so those two made me feel so comfortable, and so kind of from there, we all had dinner. It was really cool kind of getting to know each other, but then the next day was the full day where there was many groups who did like panel speaking on specific topics. I learned so much, and I kind of wanted to share a story with you. One of the gentlemen who spoke in one of the last groups, he had been incarcerated for 20 years. And he didn't really know how to read. I think he said he was 18 when he had gotten sent to prison, but he had made the decision right then to try to do something positive with the hand he was dealt. And so he ended up, like, someone, I guess, had worked with him with a dictionary and was able to learn to read. And he ended up, like, he had an opportunity to have a sentence changed, and he was about to finish his certification to become a peer support specialist, but they told him that, oh, it would be 5 more days, and he had already spent 20 years in prison, but he would have had to stay 5 more days to be able to get his peer support certification, and he did. He made the decision to stay 5 more days. So he had that when he left. And the work he is doing in Maryland is amazing. His name is Desmond Hanif Perry, and he is a statewide forensics peer support supervisor at the Maryland Office of the Public Defender. Such just a beautiful human. I can honestly say that. I loved listening to him share his story. And I had the opportunity to hear many stories like that. And, to change your life in that way, so young, to end up incarcerated for that long, and to turn something so negative into a way to grow. It's pretty astounding. I think more of us could definitely learn from that. And one of the things that he was doing while, I guess, he was incarcerated was also kind of like running smart recovery groups. And that's something that he still very much facilitates. He ended up, he facilitates these smart recovery groups, and he wanted to continue to do that because one of the things he's found was that when he had received that in the prison, he just found that it had a profound impact on the people who were incarcerated. One of the things I love is how people who were really at their lowest, who could have completely walked away from the environment that they were in during that time, instead wanted to give back and show those that if I can change, you can change too. That is such a big fucking deal. And I'm just so proud of him. And he is just one of many, by the way, because when I say that group was amazing, it was amazing. And then another individual who I spoke of earlier a little bit was Britt James Carpenter. I think Britt and I think that we will probably continue to stay in touch. And I really consider him like a friend, because just his passion for the outreach that he's doing with the Philly Unknown Project down in Kensington. This guy, he was putting a needle in his arm. He lived on the streets in Kensington. He was one of those individuals that you see. And when he found recovery, he knew he wanted to give back. And he very much is. It's really astounding the work that he is doing down there. And he really seems to have tons of support from people in the community supporting this. Because if you don't know, you have the government shutdown, but there has been, like when Doge came in, tons of cuts when it comes to grant funding, especially towards harm reduction. And it's easy to get discouraged when things like that happen. The community really, they're still fighting. They're still fighting to continue to provide the services that they have provided. And, it's kind of like that village mentality coming together, because just because funding gets cut off doesn't mean that that work still isn't needed. It's very much needed. One of the things that he has a huge role in is a place that is called the Ruth Street Garden, and it's down in Kensington. And I grew up really rural. I never lived in a big city. And so it's very different. That was another reason I was actually looking forward to being able to go down into Kensington. I know that sounds maybe terrifying for other parents, but I wanted to see it in person. If you've seen the videos, Kensington, for those who may not know, it's really an open air drug market. And when I say that, I mean people are actively injecting, uh, smoking crack, among other things, right there in the streets. It's not hidden. It's out in the open. And a lot of the videos that circulate around, they almost look like zombies slumped over while standing. I feel like for me, I can't speak for anyone else, but for me, when you think of like the fentanyl epidemic and the impact it has on communities, I often think of Kensington because of all the videos I would see. It's really heartbreaking, especially because you have people who go out there and purposely exploit and record these people who are suffering. It's someone's loved one. When I had seen on the itinerary that we were going to be going down to Kensington, I was kind of nervous initially. And then I thought, no, this is what you need to do. You've been behind a fucking phone. Rural is not the same as inner city. And the impact that is plaguing these areas, that's plaguing Black and brown communities. It was very eye-opening. I wasn't shocked by anything. And I think part of that for me, though, I can't say enough, is I've been exposed to so many traumatic events through my career in healthcare. I am around death and I am around suffering constantly. And so I think in some ways I'm kind of emotionally numb to it. It doesn't mean it doesn't hurt. It doesn't mean it's not painful to watch. But to survive in the type of work I do, you kind of learn to compartmentalize. I think for the average person who doesn't, who would not see the things that I see on a daily basis, it probably would be very difficult. What our plans were for that day wasn't like to go walk the streets and stare, gawk, or anything like that. Actually, we had a purpose, and that was to go to Ruth Street Garden, which is this basically grassy area in the Kensington area. That's this patch of grass where they've kind of made like a community garden. And so they plant seeds, they're growing vegetables, and they have chickens there. And there's this like beautiful wall mural. And it's kind of like a little piece of heaven in hell, or chaos, however you want to say it. One of the things, like, they strongly encouraged us to wear boots while walking the streets. Due to so many outreach programs actually working down in Kensington, it's not as bad as I guess it used to be from what Britt had said. But I mean, needles would just be thrown in the streets. And so because of the outreach programs, really wasn't any of that. It was definitely something I'm glad I had the opportunity to be a witness to, and to be able to plant in the garden beds that they had and spend time with all these advocates. Because at that point, I feel like all of us, we had fun together. And we talked, like all of us would talk to each other. Like the last thing right before we left, Ronnie Morales, who we have followed each other almost from the beginning. He had shared like his recovery story, and he had started following me, and we had never met. And I have adored Ronnie's content forever. Ronnie has always kind of told his story of addiction and recovery in such a humorous, lighthearted way. He was able to put humor into it, which sometimes is needed when you're talking about such dark, rather depressing topics. And Ronnie was exactly who he is online, minus the wig and the Ashley Trevino horrible makeup that he was putting on. But otherwise, oh my gosh, I wish we lived closer because I just adored him. We had taken some pictures together, but we're big TikTokers. So like before everyone was leaving the gardens, we hurried up and we were trying to come up with an idea to make a TikTok video together because I actually did not film at all while I was there. I really wanted to be present in the moment. I did take pictures with people, but I really like normally it's something that I would do in the past. I would just film to constantly be making content. No, that's not what I really wanted to do. I'm trying to really just be present in the moments, take it all in, and really be great. Just continue to be grateful for where I am today as a mom and how I have grown and been able to better support my daughter uh, through her addiction and now through her long-term recovery. And that has absolutely contributed to my ongoing healing. Because it's it's easy to escape with your phone. And I had to start kind of limiting that. My phone is a big part of my life. It's how I communicate with people who email me, making content. And I really don't even make that much content anymore. But I'm just taking a step back. I share pieces, and really a lot of my content I have really posted lately has been stuff that makes me laugh and is uplifting. But Ronnie and we did the Bees in the Trap Four Non Blondes like remix that was out. And it was I'm always a one and done. And of course, but people were kind of, I feel like, waiting for a fun video to be made. And what was really cool about that, we did that trend. And as they're circling us with the camera, you can see all the other advocates like recording and laughing, watching us do this. And it was just really cool. And Ronnie, if you hear this, I just love you, seriously, and I'm so proud of you. He has grown so much, and something we talked about, because I was sharing with him about how being in such a different place in my life and such a good place, how hard it is to figure out what is my purpose now? Do I walk away from social media? And because you don't want to go back into that hole of depression. And that's kind of been his struggle because he is doing so good and is genuinely happy and thriving. That is something to celebrate. And I know, like, when you're lost, especially as a loved one, and I know I have so many that listen to this, and your pain that you're feeling right now and the drowning, and I know how horrible that is. I will never forget it. As long as there is breath, there is hope. And I know, and I would never get mad at anybody. I know sometimes it's hard, like, to hear somebody talk about the success, the long-term success, and maybe even feel more alone through it. I wish for your loved one to find recovery just as much as I wished for my daughter. And I mean that. You don't have to carry it alone. And that's why I do want to start interviewing people so you can hear other stories. And because I know how desperate that is needed. So when I talk and I joke, I don't forget your pain. And I want you to know that. I'm working on trying to figure out how I and others can better support you. But it is okay. I just want anyone who's listening to this, when you feel like you're drowning in this pain, it is okay to occasionally have moments of joy. And if you've listened for a while, you know I have said that. You can laugh. That pain's never going to go away. It's going to be there. But it's okay to laugh. It's okay to do something that normally would have brought you joy and you not feel guilty about it. Self-care is crucial in this. It's okay to sleep in. It's okay to cry and scream, punch something. Just be careful. You don't want to have to go to the hospital and get an outrageous bill for no reason. Just don't punch someone. I don't want you to get arrested either, okay? I know I've wanted to punch my husband sometimes. Find an outlet. I mean it. And one that you enjoy, okay? And hell, people who don't, it kind of just sparks something. A lot of people don't want to get on social media and make content. I get it. It's painful. People are fucking assholes, all right? I've become really good at trolling the trolls back because I've just dealt with it for so long. But it doesn't mean it isn't hard to get some of these nasty, hateful comments. It is. It's painful. But honestly, it is not expensive to make like a basic little podcast. Like you can do 10-minute, 15-minute episodes. You don't need some fancy mic. You just need your phone. I think Libsyn. I use Riverside now just because I like it. But there are really affordable platforms that will put your content on Spotify or Apple or any of those. And I think Libsyn, it's like $20. You don't have to do video. I choose to do video just because it's easy for me. I've done video with social media. But yeah, if you want to talk, you want to bitch and complain and not have your face tied to it and give yourself some podcast name, nobody has to know who you are. Okay? And if it is a good outlet for you, do it. I mean it. And then you're not dealing with social media. But yeah, so Ronnie and we had done that TikTok dance and I just love it. It is on my Instagram and on my TikTok. And then I met that guy, Dave, who I guess has this real small podcast called the Dopey Podcast. And his podcast, just so you know, Ronnie actually had shared how it really helped him. He would listen to it through his recovery because what Dave did with this podcast is Dave is in recovery, is he has a dark humor spin on the crazy shit people do in active addiction. I think sometimes you can laugh at it. I think we as parents, loved ones, can laugh at some of the crazy fucking shit that we've done. Walking up in trap houses with our crazy eyes and just like the outrageous things that we've done. I would love it. Like I had mentioned in the beginning about sending in emails to tell your story. Just don't make it too long if possible. But I would love to hear stories about things your loved one did or crazy things that you did when your loved one was struggling in addiction. When it comes to, if it's walking into a trap house or hiding their phone, scanning everything because you lose your fucking mind through this. And there's nothing wrong with that. Okay. It's painful on all sides. And so we do crazy shit. But his podcast is geared kind of about that. I really just started listening to it. And it is funny. I have a really dark sense of humor. And so some of the things I crack up at it. And so if you're interested in listening, he's interviewed like celebrities and things like that. I would check out the Dopey podcast. But yeah, Dave, very great, normal guy. I felt like he didn't show any real ego. He just seemed to be who he is. He's comfortable in his own skin. And we laughed a lot. As nervous as I was speaking on the panel, I still get nervous actually speaking in front of an audience. He really made me feel comfortable in it. And I appreciate that so much. One of the things Dave said to me was, He actually took one of my books, because I had taken a couple up there. He told me, he's like, I was told him I was just struggling, to really make content. He's like, "You need to promote your book." And I'm like, "Yeah, you're probably right." He's like, "No, you do." And so that's something I'm gonna have to work on. One of the things I have really struggled with promoting my book has been not wanting to feel like I am taking advantage of this community and the people who are suffering. If I could give my book to everyone for free, I would. I absolutely would. Not that I make much off of it anyways through Amazon, but the stories that people have shared with me after reading my book mean everything because I didn't know what to expect. My trauma therapist, she tells me, she's like, your number one issue is unworthiness. I do. I struggle with feeling unworthy, like I don't deserve all the good things that come my way. And doesn't mean I'm not grateful, but it's still hard to process. And I poured my heart into my book. It's not perfect, but I really tried to give families detail and guidance on figuring out how to do what they can live with. And for those who don't know, my book, it is on Amazon. It is called Do What You Can Live With, a survival guide for families struggling with addiction. How did I forget my book name? See, this is why I can't promote my book, is because anytime I try to, it's like I forget everything. But those who are interested, my book is called Do What You Can Live With. It's a survival guide for families navigating addiction, grief, and impossible choices. This is it. That's my promotion, Dave. And it's 300 pages long, and it's $19.99 on Amazon. They also have a digital copy available, but I highly encourage you to get the book because it is interactive. So when I tell stories of kind of what I went through, you can actually scan a QR code that'll take you to my website, and you'll be able to see the video that actually correlates with that time and see sometimes how sickly I look, like where I was, and you really kind of get to see my growth throughout it because I share the good, the bad, and the ugly. I'm just not the same person I was when I started doing this. But yeah, hopping in the car, saying goodbyes to everyone and heading back to the airport to fly back home. It was hard. Like I wanted to come home and see my family because I missed them, but I finally felt like I really belonged, and I just loved the relationships that I had the opportunity to form with this diverse bunch of people. It's interesting because like I really actually wish I was closer to the Kensington area to be able to help with outreach like up there because there are just some really, really strong outreach programs, I feel like, in these big cities. And I feel like Florida is lacking in many ways. And my county in particular, they got the blinders on. My county actually had, it's still crazy to me, just a few years ago, and I don't live in a huge county, the highest overdose rate in the state of Florida based off population size. That's disturbing, okay? And when they won that status, they got all this funding from the state for an opioid task force. That is a fucking joke, in my opinion. I'm sorry. I don't like to be like that, but I have reached out to the lady who's over it and I have said, why is your entire website basically dedicated to vaping? Yeah, vaping's horrible, but we got bigger fucking fish to fry. Okay. You have fentanyl and meth plaguing our community and taking lives. Yet your priority is vaping on your website. And when I reached out, I am who I am, and I'm going to say how I feel. I said that. I said, I'm not really understanding why funding is going towards this because the money they're putting towards putting dogs in the schools to sniff out vapes isn't going to reduce the overdose rate in the county. But when you have people in these roles who have never been touched by addiction in their life, okay, those are the type of people who get in these positions. They have no clue. They're not understanding the real impact. And one of my issues with politicians and people in these positions in government is you have to learn to be fucking transparent, okay? Like, and I mean, and I believe the person who's in it is a good person, but she basically said people can't handle that. Like, it's blinders, the community putting the blinders on. It doesn't matter what they can handle. It is a fact that we had the highest overdose rate in the state of Florida, which has a huge population. That is concerning. And I think vaping is the least of our problems. But to each their own. And so I've really wanted to be involved in the community here. And I have, like, the gentleman in the health department locally, full support on things. But it's the other areas. I don't play the political game. And maybe that's something I need to work on, and how I can get my point across without being cunty. I don't know if that's possible. I'm just going to be honest. Do they have people that help you be less cunty, like train you to be? Maybe. But I am who I am. And I know I'm smart. I read studies. And more than anything, I have passion for this. Someone who I feel like that is in a role like that over this task force, when you're supposed to be really making a difference in the community, you need to have passion in it. And I feel like the only thing that really drives passion on a topic is some type of lived experience. But I just think we could do better. And I'd love to have more of a role, but I don't know what else to say. But anyways, so if you like this episode, please leave a review on whatever platform it is you're listening to it, because when you leave a review, it does actually boost it. I will put the link in the comments for my book, my website, which has resources. I am hoping to kind of revamp my website some and provide even more resources. And if you are really interested, search out outreach, harm reduction programs, community centers that very much could benefit maybe from volunteer work from you. Whatever you can do. And currently right now, as many of you probably know, SNAP is maybe got partial funding. I don't even know if that has gone out. I've heard different things, but there are a lot of families, children who are going to go without food. So one way that you can help, I encourage you, is to go through your pantry of food, canned food, things you know you're not going to eat, and donate it to a local food pantry. If you can, if you're able to go and maybe buy a few extra affordable groceries and donate it, whatever works, anything you can donate. If you can only donate 1-2 cans of food, that can make a difference. And so don't feel like you're not contributing enough, but I've always felt like people should never go hungry, especially in this country. And it makes me really sad that so many people are hurting right now. As always, I love you. I appreciate you. And new Substack article going into more detail kind of about my experience at Rise for Recovery is up. And as always, take care. And until next time, bye.